The glass doors of the 42nd floor conference room reflected Marcus Chen's exhausted face as he straightened his borrowed tie one last time. His hands, rough from years of construction work before the accident, trembled slightly as he gripped the portfolio containing his architectural drawings. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan stretched out like a promise he couldn't quite reach. He could hear his daughter Lily's voice from that morning, bright despite the cramped apartment they shared. "You're going to do great, Dad. I know it." The interview had started 20 minutes ago. Or rather, it should have started. The reception area outside remained eerily quiet except for the soft hum of climate control and the distant clicking of keyboards. Marcus shifted in the designer chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. His knee ached, the old injury from the scaffolding collapse that had ended his construction career and started this desperate scramble to reinvent himself at 38. The conference room door finally opened. 3 executives filed out, none making eye contact. Then came the woman whose presence seemed to shift the very air in the room. Elena Blackwood, CEO of Blackwood Development Group, moved with the kind of precision that came from never having to repeat herself. Her steel gray suit caught the afternoon light as she stopped directly in front of Marcus. "Mr. Chen." Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd already made her decision. "We've reviewed your portfolio." Marcus stood, ignoring the protest from his knee. The portfolio in his hands suddenly felt like a collection of amateur sketches rather than the 2 years of night school and sleepless dedication they represented. "Your technical skills are developing," Elena continued, her green eyes scanning him with the same efficiency she probably applied to building evaluations. "But we're looking for someone with more traditional credentials. The Columbia graduates, the Harvard MBAs. I'm sure you understand." The words landed exactly where she'd aimed them. Marcus understood perfectly. He understood that his community college courses would never stack up against Ivy League degrees, that his calloused hands marked him as someone who'd built things rather than designed them, that showing up in a suit from a thrift store to an office where even the interns wore designer labels had been naive at best. "Of course," Marcus said quietly, already tucking the portfolio under his arm. "Thank you for your time." He turned toward the elevator, each step measured and dignified despite the burning behind his eyes. 7 interviews this month, 7 variations of the same polite rejection. Behind him, he heard Elena's heels clicking back toward her office, already moving on to the next item on her agenda. If you enjoy stories that feel real and hit deep, take a second to like and subscribe, because sometimes the most powerful moments happen when we think nobody's watching. The elevator had just opened when Marcus heard the portfolio's zipper catch on his jacket button. Papers scattered across the marble floor. His drawings, his calculations, but also something else. A crayon drawing on construction paper, folded carefully between his professional documents. Lily's artwork from last week. 2 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow, with "My Hero Dad" written in purple crayon across the top. "Wait." Elena's voice cut through the lobby like a blade. Marcus froze, still kneeling among his scattered papers. She stood 10 feet away, the crayon drawing in her manicured hands. Something flickered across her face, not pity, but recognition, the kind that came from seeing something you'd forgotten existed. "Your daughter?" she asked. "She's 8. Marcus gathered the rest of his papers quickly, standing despite his knee's complaint. "She thinks I can do anything. Kids, right?" Elena studied the drawing for another moment before handing it back. "The Riverside Community Center project. Your firm is bidding on it." "My firm?" Marcus almost laughed. "I don't have a firm. I was hoping to work for yours." "No, I mean..." Elena pulled out her phone, scrolling quickly. "This design. The one with the integrated playground and senior center. Chun Architecture Solutions. That's not you." Marcus felt heat rise to his face. Technically it's registered as a business. For tax purposes. I do some freelance drafting work, small residential stuff. But the Riverside project, I submitted that proposal on my own. I know it's probably already in your rejection pile." "I haven't rejected it." Elena's tone shifted, becoming something harder to read. The board meets tomorrow to review final proposals. Your design was unexpected. The word hung between them like a challenge. Elena glanced at her watch, then back at Marcus. Do you have 20 minutes? Ah, yes. Not here. She was already walking toward the elevator, expecting him to follow. There's a coffee shop on 3rd Avenue. We need to talk about your proposal, Mr. Chun. And I need to understand why someone with your design sensibility is interviewing for a junior position at my company. The coffee shop was nothing like the sleek establishments Marcus had expected. Elena led him to a worn corner booth in what looked like a family-run place that had survived 3 decades of neighborhood gentrification. The owner, an elderly Dominican woman, greeted Elena by name and brought her usual black coffee. No sugar, without being asked. I designed my first building in a place like this, Elena said, surprising Marcus with the admission. 23 years ago, fresh out of school, convinced I was going to change the world with sustainable architecture. She pulled out his Riverside proposal on her tablet. Your design reminds me why I started. Marcus watched her scroll through his drawings, her expression intense. It's just practical, he said. I live near Riverside. I know those families. The seniors need shade and easy access. The kids need sight lines so parents can watch them. The community room needs natural light because depression rates spike in winter. You live there. Elena looked up sharply. 6 blocks away. Lily goes to the after-school program when I'm working late. Marcus hesitated, then added, which is most nights. Elena set down the tablet. The board is going to choose Hoffman Associates. They've already decided, really. Hoffman's design is safe, conventional, and 30% over budget, which means more profit in construction overruns. She paused, stirring her untouched coffee. Unless I fight for something different. Why would you? Because Hoffman's design is soulless. The words came out harder than perhaps she'd intended. Because I spent 15 years building soulless things before I took over this company, and I'm tired of it. Because your design would actually serve the community instead of just checking boxes. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Hope, but guarded. What would you need from me? Can you present to the board? Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I don't have a team. It's just me, Anne. I know. Elena pulled out her business card, but instead of handing it over professionally, she wrote something on the back. This is my direct line. Tonight, you're going to send me everything, budgets, timelines, material suppliers, everything. I'll have my team verify the numbers. Your team. If I'm going to fight for this, Mr. Chun, I need ammunition. The board respects money more than vision. We need to prove your design can be built on budget. She stood, leaving cash on the table despite Marcus's attempt to pay. One more thing. If we do this, if your design gets selected, you run the project, not as an employee of Blackwood Development, but as Chun Architecture Solutions, a real firm. Marcus's throat tightened. I don't have the resources. You will. Elena was already moving toward the door. Send me everything by 8 tonight. And Mr. Chun, wear the same suit tomorrow. The board needs to see exactly who's designing for their community. That night, Marcus spread his documents across the kitchen table while Lily did homework beside him. She'd made them both peanut butter sandwiches for dinner, her specialty when Dad was in what she called work mode. Is the fancy lady going to give you a job? Lily asked, not looking up from her math problems. Maybe something better, baby. Marcus double-checked his calculations for the 3rd time. Maybe a chance to build something that matters. All your buildings matter, Dad. She said it simply, like stating the weather. Ms. Rodriguez says the bus shelter you designed keeps her dry when it rains. That matters. Marcus pulled his daughter close, kissing the top of her head. She smelled like grape juice and childhood, the best thing in his complicated world. As he returned to his documents, he found himself thinking about Elena's expression when she'd held Lily's drawing. There'd been something there, something she'd quickly hidden behind professional efficiency. By 7:50, he'd sent everything. By 8:15, Elena had responded with 17 detailed questions. By midnight, they'd exchanged 43 emails, each one sharpening the proposal into something bulletproof. Her last email was different. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, you show them who really understands the city. The boardroom at 9 a.m. looked like a museum of wealth. 12 board members sat around a table that could have paid for Lily's college education. Marcus stood at the head, his borrowed suit suddenly feeling like armor instead of costume. Elena sat to the right of the board chairman, her face revealing nothing. Members of the board, Marcus began, clicking to his first slide. I'm not going to talk about architecture theory or design philosophy. I'm going to talk about Maria Santos, who brings her father to the Riverside Center every day because he has dementia and the center is the only place he remembers. I'm going to talk about the kids who do homework in the parking lot because the current building's Wi-Fi doesn't reach the study areas. One board member, a silver-haired man who'd been checking his phone, looked up. Marcus clicked through his slides, not just blueprints, but photographs. The real Riverside community, the cracked basketball court, the seniors sitting on broken benches, the after-school program crammed into a space meant for half as many children. Hoffman Associates will give you a beautiful building, Marcus said. I'm offering you something different, a building that works. Every design choice has a purpose. The angular roof is an artistic expression. It's calculated for optimal solar panel placement, which will cut energy costs by 40%. The open floor plan isn't trendy. It allows for sight lines that reduce the need for security staff. Mr. Chun, the chairman interrupted. Your background is in construction, not architecture. Why should we trust you with a $12 million project? Before Marcus could respond, Elena spoke. Because he's built things, Richard. He understands load-bearing walls, not just how to draw them. He knows why foundations fail, not just the theory behind them. That's hardly. I've had my team review his numbers all night, Elena continued. His budget is accurate to the dollar. Hoffman's is inflated by 30%, which we all know will become 40% by completion. The room stirred. Board members exchanged glances. Furthermore, Elena pulled out a folder. I had our legal department review Mr. Chen's liability coverage and bonding capacity. Everything is in order. The only difference between him and Hoffman is that Chen actually lives in the community he's designing for. Marcus watched the board members' faces shift. The silver-haired man, who'd been on his phone, raised his hand. Mr. Chun, your proposal mentions using local contractors. Why? Because they need the work, Marcus said simply. And because they'll do it right. They're building for their neighbors, not strangers. 2 hours of questions followed. Marcus answered each one with the kind of specificity that only came from lived experience. He talked about drainage problems in the current building's basement because he'd helped pump it out during last year's floods. He explained the HVAC requirements because he'd sat through sweltering summer programs when the current system failed. Finally, the chairman called for a break. As board members filed out, Elena remained seated. When they were alone, she turned to him. You did well. Will it be enough? She studied him for a moment. That depends. Are you prepared for what happens if you win? This project will consume your life for the next year. You'll need to hire people, manage budgets, deal with city bureaucracy. I've been preparing my whole life, Marcus said. I just didn't know it until today. Elena stood, smoothing her skirt. The board will vote in an hour. Wait in the lobby. That hour stretched like a year. Marcus paced the marble floors, watching the city 42 stories below. His phone buzzed Lily's school. For a moment, panic seized him, but it was just a reminder about the parent-teacher conference next week. He texted back a confirmation, then added a heart emoji that Lily had taught him. Mr. Chun. Elena stood by the conference room door. Her expression gave nothing away as he walked over. The board has concerns, she said, and Marcus's heart sank, about your capacity to handle a project this size. However, they've approved a compromise. A compromise? Blackwood Development will partner with Chun Architecture Solutions. We'll provide project management support and back-office resources. You maintain creative control and lead the build. 60-40 split in your favor for the design fees, 50-50 on construction management. Marcus calculated quickly. It was less than if he'd won outright, but more than he'd dreamed possible a week ago. I accept. Elena's professional mask slipped slightly, revealing what might have been a smile. There's one condition. The board wants weekly progress meetings. With me, to ensure everything stays on track. I volunteered. This time the smile was definite. I have a vested interest in seeing this succeed, Mr. Chen. The Riverside project is going to be my proof of concept for a new direction at Blackwood. Community-integrated development instead of generic luxury builds. Over the next 3 months, Marcus's life transformed into controlled chaos. He hired 2 junior architects and a project manager, all from non-traditional backgrounds like his own. The converted garage that served as Chun Architecture Solutions' office hummed with activity from dawn until well past sunset. Elena's weekly meetings started as formal affairs. She'd arrive precisely at 10 a.m. each Tuesday, reviewing spreadsheets and timelines with surgical precision. But by the 4th week, she was bringing coffee. Good coffee. Not the instant stuff Marcus survived on. By the 8th week, the meetings had moved to the construction site itself. You need to push back on the steel supplier, Elena said one Tuesday, standing in the middle of what would become the senior center. She wore jeans and work boots instead of her usual suits, a change that had happened gradually over the weeks. They're trying to substitute cheaper grade materials. Already done. Marcus showed her the email on his phone, told them we'd switch suppliers if they tried it again. Good. She walked to the window opening, looking out at the neighborhood. My father would have loved this design. He was a contractor, actually, in Ohio before I was born. It was the first personal information she'd volunteered. Marcus joined her at the window, careful to maintain professional distance. Is that why you went into development? The opposite. I wanted to prove I was nothing like him. Sophistication over sweat, you know. She laughed, but it had an edge. Spent 20 years building glass towers for people who'd never set foot in them. And then, she didn't finish, but Marcus understood the weight of unfinished sentences. He had his own. As spring turned to summer, the Riverside Center took shape. The foundation was poured during a week of perfect weather. The framing went up as the community watched from behind safety fences, children pointing excitedly at the cranes and concrete trucks. Lily became a regular at the site after school, doing homework in the construction office while Marcus worked. She'd charmed the entire crew, especially Elena, who'd started bringing her architecture books from her personal collection. She's brilliant, Elena said one afternoon, watching Lily explain to a concrete worker why she designed Fairy House with a reinforced foundation. Gets that from her father. She gets it from her mother, Marcus said quietly. Sarah was the smart one. Engineering degree from state, full scholarship. She would have built amazing things. Elena waited, not pushing. Car accident. Lily was 2. Marcus kept his voice steady through practice. Sarah was coming home from a job interview. She'd just gotten back to work after maternity leave. The other driver ran a red light. Marcus, It's why I do this, he continued, gesturing at the construction site. Sarah believed in building things that last, things that matter. Every beam we place, every wall we raise, it's what she would have done. Elena's hand found a shoulder, a brief touch that somehow carried more weight than words. The moment broke when Marcus's foreman called out about a problem with the electrical plans. As they walked over to investigate, Elena said quietly, "She would be proud of what you're building, both the center and the life you've made for Lily." That night, Marcus found himself thinking about Elena's touch, the way her professional armor had slowly revealed someone different underneath. Someone who brought his daughter books and stood in construction dust arguing with suppliers on his behalf. Someone who'd begun to feel less like a business partner and more like. He stopped that thought. They had a project to complete, boundaries to maintain. But boundaries, Marcus was learning, had a way of shifting when 2 people spend enough time building something together. The crisis came in month 4. The city inspector, a man named Brennan, with a reputation for finding problems where none existed, shut down the construction site on a Thursday morning. His report cited 17 violations, all minor, all fixable, but together enough to halt work indefinitely. Marcus stood in the silent construction site, his crew sent home, his timeline destroyed. 6 months of work, hanging by a thread because one inspector decided to flex his authority. Elena arrived within an hour of getting his call. She surveyed the stop work order, her expression darkening with each page. "Brennan's playing games," she said. "These violations are nonsense. The electrical panel spacing is up to code. He's citing an outdated regulation. The emergency exit signage hasn't been installed because we're not at that phase yet. Can we fight it?" "We can, but it'll take weeks, maybe months." Elena pulled out her phone, then stopped. Or, there's another way. Brennan has a supervisor, Commissioner Hayes. I know him from the Hudson Towers project. But Marcus, if I make that call, if I use my weight to pressure the city, it goes against everything we said this project would be. No special treatment, no insider dealings. Marcus looked at the half-built center, imagining the families who were counting on it being ready before winter. What would you do if this was a Blackwood-only project? "I'd make the call without hesitation." "Then don't. We do this right." Marcus picked up the violation report. "I'll address every single issue, even the bogus ones. I'll document everything. If Brennan wants to play by the book, we'll give him a perfect book." Elena studied him. "That could take weeks. Cost thousands in delays." "Then it takes weeks." They worked through the night in Marcus's makeshift office, Elena beside him as they addressed each violation with obsessive detail. She'd long since abandoned her professional distance, her shoulder pressed against his as they hunched over building codes and compliance documents. At 3 a.m., Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Dad, Ms. Elena, you're still working." "Go back to bed, baby," Marcus said, but Lily had already crawled into Elena's lap, something she'd started doing recently that made Marcus's chest tight with complicated feelings. "The mean man won't let you build?" Lily asked. "We're working on it," Elena said, her arms naturally encircling the little girl. "You'll fix it," Lily said with absolute certainty. "You and Dad fix everything." As Lily fell asleep against Elena's shoulder, Marcus caught Elena, watching him over his daughter's head. The look held something he couldn't quite name, something that made the cluttered office feel suddenly too small. "I should take her home," Marcus said. "Finish the documentation," Elena replied softly. "I've got her." Watching Elena hold a sleeping daughter while they fought through bureaucratic red tape, Marcus realized the boundaries he'd been so careful to maintain had already disappeared. Somewhere between construction dust and late-night strategy sessions, between Elena teaching Lily about blueprints and standing beside him against city inspectors, they'd become something more than business partners. The question was what to do about it. 2 weeks later, they stood before Inspector Brennan with 300 pages of documentation. Marcus had addressed not only the 17 violations, but had gone above and beyond, implementing safety measures that exceeded code by 50%. Brennan reviewed everything with obvious reluctance. He'd clearly expected them to either pay an expediting fee, a barely disguised bribe, or use political connections to bypass him. "Everything appears to be in order," he said finally, stamping the approval with visible disappointment. As Brennan left, Elena turned to Marcus. "You know he was waiting for a payoff, right?" "I know. We could have saved 2 weeks and $10,000 with a strategic donation to his kid's baseball team or whatever he calls it." "We could have." Marcus met her eyes. "But then we'd be like everyone else building in this city. The Riverside Center is different. It has to be." Elena was quiet for a moment. "Then, this is why She stopped, color rising to her cheeks. "This is why this project matters." That evening, as the crew celebrated the lifted stop work order, Marcus found Elena on the roof of the half-completed building, watching the sunset over the neighborhood. "Avoiding the party?" he asked, joining her at the edge. "Thinking," She didn't look at him. The board wants me to take on 3 more luxury towers. $100 million projects. The kind of work Blackwood is known for. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. That's good. For the company. Is it? She turned to face him. Marcus, these past months, building something real. Something that matters. It's reminded me why I started in architecture. Those luxury towers feel like graveyards now. Beautiful, expensive graveyards. So don't build them. It's not that simple. I have a board to answer to. Shareholders who expect returns. Elena. He said her name carefully, like handling something fragile. What do you want? She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, I want to build more centers like this. I want to wake up knowing my work matters to real people. I want. She stopped, looking at him with an expression that made his heart race. I want to stop pretending this is just business between us. Before Marcus could respond, his phone rang. Lily's babysitter, frantic. Lily had fallen from the playground equipment. They were at the emergency room. The next hours blurred together. Marcus barely remembered the drive to the hospital, only that Elena had somehow ended up behind the wheel of his truck while he made panic phone calls. The emergency room's fluorescent lights made everything surreal and harsh. Lily lay in the pediatric ward bed, her arm in a cast, her face pale but alert. I was being too brave, she told Marcus solemnly, like when you climbed the scaffolding to check the roof. Oh, baby. Marcus smoothed her hair, his hands shaking. You scared me. I'm okay, Dad. The doctor said I'm tough. Like you. Elena had disappeared during the admission process, and Marcus assumed she'd left. It wasn't her responsibility, after all. But an hour later she returned with a teddy bear wearing a hard hat and a tiny tool belt. For the bravest builder I know, she told Lily, who clutched it with her good arm. Will you stay? Lily asked. Both of you. The hospital is scary at night. Marcus started to make an excuse for Elena, but she was already pulling a chair next to Lily's bed. I'm not going anywhere. They spent the night in the pediatric ward, taking turns reading to Lily from the architecture books Elena had brought. When Lily finally fell asleep near dawn, Marcus found Elena standing by the window, tears on her cheeks. She's fine, he said softly. Kids bounce back. I know. Elena wiped her eyes. It's just, when you got that call, when I saw your face, I realized how much you both mean to me. How much this life you've built means to me. And I have no right to it. No claim to either of you. Marcus moved closer, close enough to see the exhaustion in her eyes, the vulnerability she never showed in boardrooms. Elena, I'm your business partner. Your connection to funding. I'm the CEO who almost rejected you that first day because your resume didn't look right. She laughed bitterly. God, Marcus, I nearly let you walk away because you didn't have the right degrees. But you didn't. Because of a crayon drawing. Because your daughter's art reminded me of something I'd lost. She turned to face him fully. I've built an empire of glass and steel, Marcus. I've made millions for people who already had millions. And in all that time, I've never built anything that a little girl would draw a picture of. Until now. Marcus reached out, taking her hand. You're not just a business partner. Not anymore. Haven't been for months. Then what am I? He thought about all the late nights, the shared battles against bureaucracy, the way she'd driven him to the hospital without hesitation, the natural way Lily curled into her arms. Your family, he said simply. The family we choose. Elena's composure finally cracked completely. Marcus pulled her close as she cried. For the father she tried to prove wrong. For the years spent building monuments to nothing. For the unexpected gift of finding something real in a community center project, and the single father who'd refused to compromise his integrity. When she pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. The board meeting is Monday. They want my recommendation on the new towers. What will you tell them? The truth. That Blackwood development should pivot to community-integrated projects. That we should build things that matter. That profit without purpose is just expensive emptiness. She managed a small smile. They'll probably fire me. or they'll see the vision. The Riverside Center is already getting national attention. 3 architectural magazines want to feature it. Because of your design. Because of our project. We built this together, Elena. From the bed, Lily stirred. Are you guys finally gonna kiss or what? This is like those movies where everyone knows but them. Marcus felt heat flood his face. Elena laughed. A real laugh that transformed her face. Your daughter, Elena said. Has excellent timing. She gets that from her mother too, Marcus replied, but he was smiling. Monday's board meeting would change everything. Marcus knew that. If Elena succeeded in pivoting Blackwood Development, they'd be business partners, transforming the city together. If she failed, if the board rejected her vision, she'd likely leave to start something new. Either way, the careful boundaries between business and personal had dissolved entirely that night in the hospital. Whatever came next, they'd face it as more than partners, more than friends. The Riverside Center opened on a brilliant October morning, 6 months after that first failed interview. The whole neighborhood turned out. Families with strollers, seniors with walkers, teenagers trying to look too cool to care, but showing up anyway. Marcus stood with Elena and Lily at the entrance, watching the community stream into the building they'd fought so hard to complete. The senior center was already full, a Tai Chi class beginning in the main room. Children's laughter echoed from the playground, visible through the strategic sight lines Marcus had designed. My dad's building, Lily announced to anyone who'd listen. Her cast long since removed, but the teddy bear and the hard hat still carried everywhere. Your dad's and Elena's building, Marcus corrected. The board hadn't fired Elena. Instead, faced with the overwhelming positive press about the Riverside Center and 3 offers from rival firms trying to poach her, they'd given her full autonomy to pursue community-integrated development. Blackwood Development's stock had risen 12% on the news that they were pivoting to socially conscious construction. Commissioner Hayes approached them, his political smile in place. Beautiful work. The city needs more projects like this. In fact, I have a proposition. Send it to my office, Elena said smoothly. Mr. Chun and I will review it together. As Hayes walked away, Marcus raised an eyebrow. Together. Partners, remember? Although, Elena pulled out a small box from her pocket. I have a proposal of my own, not business-related. Inside was a key. I bought the brownstone on Park Slope, the one with the workshop in the back that you said would make a perfect architecture studio. It needs renovation, of course. I thought maybe Chun Architecture Solutions could take on the project. Make a home for, she glanced at Lily, who was pretending not to eavesdrop, for a family. Marcus stared at the key, understanding the weight of what she was offering. Not just a house, but a future. A life built together with the same intentionality they'd brought to the Riverside Center. Elena Blackwood, he said slowly. Are you asking me to move in with you? I'm asking you to build something with me. Something that lasts. Lily gave up all pretense of not listening. Say yes, Dad. Her house has room for a dog. You've seen the house? Marcus asked his daughter. We maybe did some research, Lily admitted, while you were at the building site. Marcus looked between his daughter and Elena, his family, chosen and cherished. The mother who'd given Lily life would have loved this, he thought, would have loved Elena's fierce intelligence and hidden softness, would have loved how she challenged him and championed him in equal measure. Yes, he said, let's build something. The kiss that followed was interrupted by Lily's delighted squeal and spontaneous applause from several community members who'd been watching the drama unfold. Marcus didn't care. He'd learned that the best structures weren't the ones that looked perfect on paper, but the ones built with heart, integrity, and the courage to believe in something better. 6 months later, the renovated brownstone was complete. Marcus's architecture studio occupied the converted carriage house and back, close enough to home that Lily could visit after school, but separate enough for client meetings. Elena had turned the 3rd floor into her office, where she ran Blackwood Development's new Community Initiatives division. They were married the following spring in the Riverside Center's community room, surrounded by construction workers and board members, neighborhood families, and city officials. Lily served as both flower girl and best daughter, a title sheet invented for the occasion. Commissioner Hayes attended, bringing news that the city wanted to commission 12 more community centers based on the Riverside model. Blackwood Architecture, he said, reading from his notes. Is that the firm name? Marcus and Elena exchanged glances. They hadn't formalized anything yet, hadn't even discussed merging their business interests officially. Blackwood, Elena said. I like the sound of that. Blackwood sounds better, Marcus countered, grinning. You two are impossible, Lily informed them. Just call it CBC. Blackwood Collaborative. Easy. And it was easy, Marcus realized, watching his daughter explain her naming logic to amused wedding guests. Not the journey that had been hard-won through every rejected interview, every late night, every battle against bureaucracy and prejudice. But this moment, this life they'd built together, felt as natural as breathing. The architect who'd once been turned away for not having the right credentials now stood at the center of a revolution in urban development. The CEO who'd once dismissed him for his working-class background now wore his grandmother's wedding ring, restored and resized. The little girl who'd drawn crayon pictures of her hero, Dad, now had two parents who showed her every day that buildings and families were strongest when built on foundations of love, integrity, and mutual respect. That night, after the guests had gone home and Lily had fallen asleep between them on the couch, Marcus and Elena sat in comfortable silence, looking at the plans for their next project spread across the coffee table. Do you ever think about that first day? Elena asked. If I hadn't chased after you. You didn't chase. You walked. Very professionally. I ran, she admitted. Those security cameras probably caught the CEO of Blackwood Development actually running in heels after a job candidate. Marcus pulled her closer. Best race you ever ran. Second best, she corrected. The best was running toward a life that actually means something. With you. With Lily. With all of this. Outside, the city hummed with its endless energy, but inside the brownstone, in the home they'd built together, everything was quiet and complete. The drawings on the coffee table could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, they had everything they needed. Each other, their daughter, and the knowledge that sometimes the best structures weren't the ones that follow traditional blueprints, but the ones brave enough to imagine something entirely new. The story could have ended there, with neat resolution and happy symmetry. But life, Marcus had learned, kept building even after the ribbon-cutting ceremonies. 3 years into their marriage, when CBC had grown to 12 employees and 40 projects, Elena discovered she was pregnant. The news came the same week they'd won the contract to redesign the entire Riverside district, 20 blocks of mixed-income housing, community spaces, and small business incubators. Timing, Elena said, staring at the test results while Marcus held his breath. I'm 44. This is unexpected, Marcus finished. Terrifying, she corrected. Marcus, I don't know how to be. Lily was already perfect when I met her. He found her hand. You've been Lily's mother for 3 years. You know exactly how to do this. Stepmother, she corrected, though Lily hadn't used that distinction in years. Mother, Lily said from the doorway, having inherited her father's talent for appearing at pivotal moments. You're my mom in every way that counts. And you're going to be amazing for this baby, too. The pregnancy was difficult. Elena, used to controlling everything through sheer will and careful planning, found herself at the mercy of morning sickness that lasted all day and a body that no longer obeyed her commands. She worked through it anyway, reviewing blueprints between bouts of nausea, conducting board meetings via video when the doctor ordered bed rest in the 3rd trimester. Marcus watched her struggle with a vulnerability she'd never had to face in hostile takeovers or contentious city council meetings. The woman who'd stared down billionaire developers now cried over her inability to tie her own shoes. I'm failing, she said one night, 8 months pregnant. The Riverside project is behind schedule. The board is questioning my capability. Everything I've built is still standing. Marcus interrupted. Elena, you're building a human being. The board can wait. Their son arrived during a February blizzard that shut down the entire city. Elena's water broke at the construction site, because of course it did. Marcus drove through abandoned streets, while Elena timed contractions and Lily, now 14, called out directions from the GPS. You're going to be an amazing big sister, Elena told Lily between contractions. I already am amazing, Lily replied, which made Elena laugh despite the pain. James Chin Blackwood was born at dawn, screaming his arrival with a voice that would have made any construction foreman proud. When the nurse placed him in Elena's arms, Marcus watched his wife's face transform with wonder and terror in equal measure. He's so small, she whispered. How is he so small? All the best buildings start with small foundations, Lily said, peering at her brother. Right, Dad. The Riverside District project continued despite Elena's maternity leave, or what she insisted on calling her remote work period. Marcus would find her at 3 a.m., nursing James while reviewing structural specifications, building a pumping schedule around conference calls. You don't have to prove anything, he told her repeatedly. I'm not proving. I'm building, she'd respond, though they both knew the truth. Elena had spent so many years equating worth with productivity that she couldn't quite believe she deserved rest. It took Margaret Chin, Marcus's mother, arriving from California, to set Elena straight. You think you're the first woman to try running the world with a baby on her hip? She asked, taking James so Elena could shower for the first time in 3 days. Sweetheart, we've been doing this forever, but we're allowed to ask for help. The help came from unexpected places. The construction crew Elena had once intimidated now brought casseroles and baby clothes. The board members who'd questioned her capability sent their own wives and daughters to share advice and solidarity. The community they'd built with bricks and mortar had become something more, a network of support that caught them when they stumbled. When James was 6 months old, the first phase of the Riverside District opened. Elena stood at the podium with James in a carrier against her chest, Lily beside her, Marcus at her back. She spoke about sustainable development and community integration while James grabbed at the microphone, making the crowd laugh. This is what we're building for, she said, departing from her prepared remarks. Not for portfolios or profit margins, but for the next generation, for all our children. The applause was thunderous, but Marcus barely heard it. He was watching his wife, brilliant, driven Elena who'd learned that strength could include softness, that building a life was just as important as building an empire. Years flowed like water through thoughtfully designed spaces. Lily graduated high school as valedictorian, her speech about the architecture of community making Elena cry and Marcus burst with pride. She chose MIT for college, her mother's alma mater, she said, looking at the photo of Sarah that still held an honored place in their home. Elena had been one to suggest it, understanding that loving Lily meant honoring all the mothers who'd shaped her. James grew into a curious, determined child who spent hours in Marcus's studio, building elaborate structures from scraps and salvage materials. Like you did, Daddy, he'd say, having heard the stories of his father's journey from construction worker to architect. CBC became one of the city's most sought-after firms, but they remained selective, choosing projects that aligned with their values. They turned down a $100 million casino project to design a network of addiction recovery centers. They passed on luxury condos to focus on transitional housing for families experiencing homelessness. We're leaving money on the table, the board occasionally reminded Elena. We're building something worth more than money, she'd respond, and the success of their community-focused projects silenced most critics. One autumn evening, 15 years after that failed interview, Marcus found Elena on the roof of the Riverside Center. It had become their tradition, watching sunsets from the place where everything had changed. Lily called, Elena said. She got the internship at the sustainable design firm in Copenhagen. That's incredible. She'll be gone for a year. Marcus heard the emotion she was trying to hide. She'll come back. Different, Elena said. She'll come back different. That's good. It's what's supposed to happen. But God, Marcus, When did I become someone who cries about her children growing up? I was supposed to be the CEO, the one who never let emotion affect her decisions. You're still the CEO. You're also a mother, a wife, a builder of communities. He pulled her close. You're allowed to be all of it. James appeared on the roof, now 8 years old and obsessed with blueprints. Mom, Dad, look. He held up a drawing of a building that seemed to defy several laws of physics, but showed remarkable creativity. It's a house that turns into a boat when there's flooding. Interesting concept, Elena said, shifting into teaching mode. Tell me about the structural transformation mechanism. As James launched into his explanation, Marcus watched his family, the one they'd built through choice and chance, through rejection and acceptance, through learning that the strongest structures weren't always the ones that looked perfect on paper. The city spread below them, lights beginning to twinkle in buildings they designed, in communities they'd helped shape. Somewhere down there, families were gathering in spaces CBC had created. Children were playing in thoughtfully designed playgrounds. Seniors were finding connection in carefully planned community centers. We did good, Elena said quietly, reading his thoughts as she often did now. We did good, he agreed. James interrupted their moment with another question about structural engineering, and they turned their attention to their son's wild imagination, guiding it with the patience of parents who understood that the best buildings and the best lives started with someone brave enough to dream beyond conventional blueprints. The sun set over the city they'd helped reshape, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, projects to complete, communities to serve, a daughter to see off to Denmark, a son to raise with creativity and conviction. But tonight, on the roof of the building where their story had truly begun, the Chin Blackwood family stood together, architects of a life more beautiful than any structure they'd ever designed. The failed interview had become the foundation of everything. The rejection had been redirection. The single dad who'd walked away had been chased by destiny in the form of a CEO who'd forgotten why she'd started building in the first place. Together, they'd remembered. Together, they'd built something that would last far longer than glass and steel, a legacy of love, integrity, and the radical belief that buildings, like families, were strongest when they served not just a few, but everyone. In the end, that was the blueprint that mattered most.